Well, and it's the idea of baby steps. You tackle big problems slowly. It's the big ask, and then you take a little bit of what you want, and then you big ask again, and you take a little bit of what you want. And so, as long as we're moving in a positive direction, I'm okay with that. Small change moving in the right direction is
better
good.
than no change.
Like we should, right? We should be proposing for big change, but then be okay when it's small.
Good morning, Idaho. Welcome to the Local Yokel Idaho podcast, where we talk about what is going on in the wonderful state of Idaho. For those tuning in for the first time, we like to have a little bit of banter before we get into the stories, but I understand if you're short on time, so we provided timestamps in the description so you can jump straight to the stories you're interested in. With that said, for all those that stayed, welcome. So glad to have you with us here today. I know the banter is one of my favorite times, kind of a little bit more candid conversation about stuff that's going on in Idaho, which, as Idahoans, we kind of enjoy doing that, but I hope you all have had a wonderful week. I know mine has been another crazy one between doing some different work and things. And then it is, there's been stuff with the podcast. We've had several interviews that are coming down the chute and working on and getting those ready and the scripts for them. You can stay tuned for those because those will be coming out shortly, hopefully. And then there's just the craziness that for those that are in politics, or I assume someone that's listening to this probably is to a certain degree, the craziness of election seasons, people running for races, be it friends or people and trying to keep up with this and that. It can be a lot sometimes, but it's also very rewarding. But one thing that isn't crazy, and I'm very glad to have here today, is John. He's going to be co-hosting with me again today.
Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say I'm not crazy, but I am here.
It depends on the thing.
It depends on the day and what we're talking about. But I am here. It is a lovely time of year, coming off of umpiring a baseball game for my son earlier today. It was a lot of fun. We lost by a lot, but that's okay. They're playing baseball, and some of them are having fun, so it's a good time.
Right.
But yeah, it's a good time to be alive. It's the political world is heating up, you might say, in any number of ways, and it's getting interesting.
It's going to be crazy to see what kind of happens as we get closer to the May 21st.
Yep.
Date, because yeah, like any election, the craziness happens just before the finish line, right? People trying to get those last minute either jabs or things they'll think will win, or they'll feel like they're in a corner or something, and then they're going to try to do something. I hope everyone, obviously, I would say, if you believe there's a God, then with the elections, you do put your best foot forward. And if it's the Lord's will, then you will be elected. And if it's not, you won't be elected. But for those who don't, I could see where it could get really nail biting and you're willing to do things you weren't willing to do before. But getting out of the deep part, we haven't even gotten into the show yet. I know just general things about Idaho. One thing I posted, I think on the Twitter, the YouTube, and the locals, it's a bit to try to keep it all in check. I was, about a week or two back now, I actually for the first time saw a Cybertruck. Hate it or love it, you have to admit they stand out. I know some people I messaged and shared the photo to were like, it's hideous, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, fair, but also you gotta admit they had some objectives. Their objective is we don't want to make just another truck.
Yep.
They achieved that. We want to make it look futuristic, be it if you agree or not, because I know there's different versions in design language about futuristic type of looks. I think they nailed a certain level of futuristic look, but it was just still cool to see it, because it's like something, it's not like anything else you see anywhere, and to actually not just see it on a picture, to see it in person was really, really, really cool.
Yeah, no, that's cool. It's I don't notice Teslas driving around. My son does. My son looks at cars and notices all of them and then talks about them ad nauseum. But if nothing else, Tesla made a very noticeable vehicle. It makes me think of old sci-fi movies.
Right.
And the vehicles.
Almost Blade Runner-esque.
Yeah, Blade Runner or Demolition Man.
It seems like Elon has a spot for that, which, if you're one of the richest men on earth, or richest, depending on how the stock market's doing, you can kind of do that. In all fairness, you can be like, hey, I like this type of design, and I'm going to do it. Which,
sure.
I guess all power to you.
Yeah, at the very least, it's an iconic design.
It's not easily going to be forgotten.
Well, at the very least, the Cybertruck is not as bad as the Chevy SSR. I don't know if you.
I can't.
I don't know if you remembered
brain.
that, but I'm going to share my screen here so you can
I know
see
some
this.
people really hated the Prius.
So it's this thing.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah, the SSR.
It's almost like the Subaru Brat and how Honda has a like truck SUV crossover.
Well, there's the Thunderbird,
Is it the Ridgeline? Is that what Honda's like truck looking like SUV is, I think?
Something like
yeah,
that.
I think that's what
There
it is.
was the new Thunderbird. It looks a lot like this thing, like the front end of this thing.
A little bit,
Like
yeah. I will admit, I do actually like Ford's, for where credit is due, Ford wanted to do a modern design of the Thunder, but they wanted it to look classic, and I think it's the best adaptation I've seen. I'm not talking about the engine and the sails and the comfort, but just the look, the design. Anywho, sidetrack into cars.
But speaking of cars, that does bring us into our first story.
Yes, it does.
So, see, perfect segue. We're good at this.
John is better at it than I am. He has a gift, and we should.
Yeah, we totally planned it. But yeah, speaking of cars, we're going to talk about House Bill 531 here, which is with regards to driver's education. So, you want to introduce us to this, Tyler?
So with that, obviously the cost of everything seems to be going up for everyone, and we're groaning and loving and enjoying all that, especially with inflation. And no one knows that more than parents in Idaho. One of the main things that causes that to go up for parents is their children. Shocker. Beyond food, as children get older, one thing that is necessary in America, and especially in Idaho, is the ability to drive. For some in Idaho, this is cheap because their school pays for it. But for those homeschooling or in areas that the school doesn't, it can be expensive. In this series, we will be examining the bills that passed the House and Senate, reached the governor's desk, and were signed. We'll explain the history, what they say, and how they will affect you. In this episode, we'll be examining House Bill 531, which was signed March 12th of this year and goes into effect July 1st, also of this year. We'll see how these changes are beneficial for some parents for teaching their kids how to drive, but more on that later. First off, John, would you like to kind of unpack the history on this specific bill?
Sure. So it was sponsored by Representative Ron Mendive, or however you pronounce her name, out of Coeur d'Alene, and Senator Carl, Bjerke?
Coeur d'Alene has some...
That's a cool name. Bjerke. Not sure how to pronounce that, but that's okay. You're from Coeur d'Alene. That's a cool name. I like it. So this was reported out of committee with a do pass recommendation. It passed the House with 68-2-0. There were only 2 votes against it, which means a lot of people liked it. It was, and then it passed the Senate with 34-1. Let's see. The people that voted against it are, more of these names. Necochea, and Rubel. And then in the Senate, voting against it were Anthon, Harris, Lee, and Lenny. And then absent was Orn. Ward and
Okay, if you want, you can back up to the top.
No, I'm good. We'll just run with this. Ward Engelking. Man, we have some awesome names in our House and Senate. I'm just going to say it, but also, yeah, there you go. So the question then is, what does the bill do? So it didn't write a completely new law. Rather, it added a little bit for parents to existing law. So this bill introduced a new option for students to receive driver's training from a qualifying parent or legal guardian known as Parent-Student On-Road Driver's Training.
Very short.
This allows for, it's a short title. This allows for students living in rural school districts or districts that don't offer driver's education courses to still get some driver's education. The parent or guardian must have a valid Idaho driver's license and meet some other qualifications. So these qualifications are the parent or legal guardian and the student must live in a rural school district as defined by Idaho Code Section 33319, less than 20 enrolled students per square mile, or in a school district that does not offer driver's education courses. Also, the parent or legal guardian must possess a valid Idaho driver's license that permits unaccompanied driving. The parent or legal guardian must not have had their license suspended, revoked, canceled, or been disqualified from driving or from holding an Idaho driver's license in the previous 2 years. The parent or legal guardian must be 21 years of age or older, and then they must also teach the student the accepted Idaho driver's education curriculum. So no going off book and teaching them crazy stuff. Not allowed. And then the requirements for the parent-student training. The parent-student training must include 92 hours of on-road training over at least 6 months with minimal requirements for street highway driving and night driving. The parent must maintain a log and submit it to the county driver's license office. And then the student must also complete an online driver education class. Which, if you're living out in the middle of nowhere, this doesn't seem like it's like these lists of requirements would be too hard to meet. So, I don't know. Seems interesting to me.
No, it's not hard to meet per se. I mean, it's basically, hey, teach your kid how to drive so they can pass the test, basically. And for clarification, I had it later in here in my notes, and I'll probably trip myself up here. But this isn't for a full-on license. It's for that permit part. Being as someone who's gone through that process and being a little bit of an older family, if you're under a certain age, you have to go through and get your permit, and then you get your permit, and then you can go driving. But for all of that, usually you have to do a driver's training course. But for those of us who don't go through the main public school system, you have to purely pay for private to get that done. And that's usually expensive because usually with the public school system model, the public school does it and it comes from your taxes and you don't have to worry about it and the kids learn to drive, right? Just like another class at your public school. But usually private education for that driver's training is because you couldn't make it maybe in the public schools class and you need more attention, you need more help, you need someone who's really good at it, really expertise that isn't the cookie cutter mold. And so usually private driver's training is a bit more expensive, expensive in a way that kind of stings to the point where I know my sister is getting ready to go down that path and, it's not a zesty price tag. And so the part that's kind of frustrating with this, and I'll give these details here, if you live in a rural school district, which we mentioned earlier, that's fewer than 20 enrolled students per square mile, you can teach your kids to drive without paying for driver's training courses. Granted, for context on the rural side of it, according to the National Center for Education Statistics, between 2015 and 2016, I know a little old, but it was the most up-to-date information I could get. This only covers 24.8% of Idaho's students were actually enrolled in what was classified as rural, which comes to the second part where I think this bill had some great stuff. I know last legislative session, I wasn't able to find the number. There was a bill similar to this, but what it did is it didn't even have the rural clause. It just said, yeah, parents can teach their kids to drive. If they don't want to use the public school system, they can totally do that. If they want to use private, they can use private, but the kid needs to pass basically a standardized driving test, but to get a permit or some temporary things, the parent has the full right. That bill failed. This one showed up, which is almost the same language except for that rural part.
Right. So I just did a cursory Google search, and Google's questionable when it comes to searches, but it gives a starting point. And it looks like at least here in the Boise area, if you're going to go the private route, then you're going to pay somewhere between $400 to $800 for driver's ed. Now, and I should have looked this up. When can you get your license?
Like your full license, not the
like.
It's 17.
Can you get
you can do an early test or something like that. You can get your permit here in Idaho. It's either, I might be mixing up the aircraft one because that's sooner, but I want to say it's like 16 or 15 because of our agriculture. We actually have one of the lowest ages you can get a permit in the state just because so much ag work happens.
17. If you're under 17, you need to do driver's ed. If you're over 17, you can just get your driver's license at 17.
And with even with the parent one in the rural area, the person would have to go and...
You still need to pass your written and your driving skill test and provide necessary documentation. So you still can't get your driver's license if you just want to. You still have to pass your written test, which is a joke. You just kind of read their booklet that tells you all the answers, and then you take the test. And then if you fail the test, you can take it again in a couple days. Yeah. It's a simple test. I had to take it to come here. And then to get my motorcycle license, I also had to take an additional test. And that also was very easy. So the written test is easy. And then you have to take your driver's or your driving skill test as well. And honestly, I haven't done that since I was a kid in Michigan. So I don't know how it is to take your driving skill test now, but
for me, it was not that difficult. I mean, I can remember because it was pretty recent. If you're listening on audio, you might not realize this, but I'm a bit younger. So
Well,
it
yeah, because I think
wasn't that hard.
what gosh, 86, 04. I'm 38. Am I 38?
Oh boy.
Wow, I'm 38. So yeah, it's been 22 years since I took my driver's ed test.
Time flies when
22?
you're having fun, right?
No, 12. 38. No, 22. Wow, math is hard. It's okay. I'm an electrical engineer.
Everyone, don't worry. John does amazing engineering work. Nothing's going to burn down.
See, Tyler doesn't actually know that. He's just assuming.
John's just a closeted pyrotechnic. He's like, yes.
I'm going to say most males of the species are, and a lot of the females are too.
Yes, there's something innately amazing about something either catching fire or going boom.
Yeah, speaking of, don't make your car go boom or catch on fire. That's bad.
Yes, that will fail your test right there. But I kind of coming back to this.
Speaking of failing tests, all right. So going back 22 years to when I was doing driver's ed, I went through it with a buddy of mine, and he was a year younger than me, and he failed his driver's test twice with flying colors. So he got to the end of the test, and the person that was giving the test the first time, he was like, well, you did everything absolutely right, except you didn't slow down going through a school zone during school time. And he was like, and so you were speeding by over 20 miles per hour. And so because you were speeding by over like 20 miles per hour at any time during the test, I have to fail you. It's like, dag nabbit. 2 weeks later, took the test again, failed in the exact same way, speeding through the exact same school zone at the exact same time. And I was like, dude, come on, man.
It's one thing if you get something else wrong. It's another thing if you did the exact same thing twice.
Yep. Oh, and it was hilarious. Smartest kid I knew. And it got to the end of the test, and his dad was in the back, and it's like, funniest thing because he failed it twice. Yeah. I ragged him for that one for a long time.
As he should be.
So yeah, don't speed through school zones, especially if you're taking your driver's ed test or your driving skill test. That'll fail you, apparently.
Yeah, amazing. But bringing that with this bill, obviously it is going to be great, and the upside is for those in rural areas, you're not going to have the inconvenience, and you get the amazing thing of that you get to save money. You get to train your kids, which I think is what it should be anyways. But for the vast majority of us in the state, about 75% of us that are dealing with this issue of, especially in Idaho, you need a driver's license. It's a big state, and it's a rural state for the most part. And to try to get around outside of the valley, you need to be able to drive. And for us that are homeschoolers, which there's a lot of, or private school or something, that cost is kind of large. So if our legislator wanted to do something to really help, and especially stand there for school choice and all these other things, and make it easier to homeschool, make it easier to get yourself out of the state subsidized system of education or whatever else, if you're conservative and you're wanting choices and freedom, this is one thing you could do to try to help with that. My guess here again, playing just a little, I have not heard anything, do not think I am teasing, anything like that. But I wouldn't be shocked if what happened is this bit was added to get it through the legislature, and that there's a plan on the back end to amend that to make it more broad once they show, look, there's a bunch of drivers on the road for the last 3 or 4 years, and they were educated this way, and they're not having bad records and blah, 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 blah. And then they can turn around and be like, so if that's the case, why shouldn't we move that to our biggest rural areas where there's a high demand and there's a lot of people and there's not enough instructors?
Yeah. Well, and it's the idea of baby steps. You tackle big problems slowly. It's the big ask, and then you take a little bit of what you want. And then you big ask again, and you take a little bit of what you want. And so, as long as we're moving in a positive direction, I'm okay with that. Small change moving in the right direction is good.
Better than no change.
Like we should, right. We should be proposing for big change, but then be okay when it's small. And baby steps in the right direction are moving in there. Baby steps in the right direction is movement in the right direction.
So bringing this all to a close, we're still working on the messaging for it, but I wanted to do a series kind of breaking down each one of the bills that got signed, because obviously we've talked about stuff that's going on in the legislature. If you're someone that's listening, you've probably heard to it a lot. But sometimes what will happen is after the aftermath of it all, you'll be like, okay, what happened? What legitimately got done with all the arguing, all the fighting, all the I want my bill,
Yeah.
call the governor, make him sign this or whatever else. What really got written, and how is it going to affect your life when it goes into effect? And so we wanted to do a series on that. Obviously, if you get mad with me when we get to the end of it and we haven't gone through over every single bill, that's because the governor signs a ton of them, and some of them, I will admit, are boring, and you're welcome to do that if you care that much to go through all of them. But we're going to go through this series, this one being the first one, to kind of unpack the things that apply to you, either areas where we had wins. Obviously, this is a little bit of a win, where maybe there's losses and there's things to improve kind of going forward.
Yeah. And let's see, how do you close this out? And now you know. Or, and knowing is half the battle. And here's the question, Tyler, do you know what that's from?
No.
Knowing is half the battle. G.I. Joe.
Oh, my dad would know it instantly, but I don't.
Oh, yeah, your dad would know it immediately. Because he's a little bit older than me, but not that much.
Hey there, since you've made it this far, you probably enjoyed the show, and that probably means you want to keep up with all things Idaho. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you want to see all of our content in one place or support us, we recommend you check out our locals page. It is a place for all things local, yokel, Idaho, and so much more. Not to mention, if you found our content valuable and think it might benefit others, your shares and likes help us spread the word about our beautiful state. Thank you for your support and being part of the local yokel Idaho community. Together, hopefully, we can keep Idaho informed, engaged, and involved in this wonderful state. Now, let's dive back into the show. Which, something that is very, very dear to many, many Idahoans' hearts. Potatoes. Our next story here is, where are the potatoes? So in this segment, I am surprised I actually haven't done one like this yet. It's honestly actually quite simple, but it is very dear to every Idahoan's hearts. Potatoes. We love them. We love to make fun of our love for them, but heaven have mercy on you if you're someone from out of state that tries to make fun or take away our potatoes from us, because that can end poorly. It's kind of like trying to take away an Idahoan's guns. With that deep love of potatoes, one might think that you would see potatoes everywhere in the state, but you don't. So where are those precious starchy delights that Idaho holds so dear? In this segment, we're going to be answering that question, giving you some tips about finding them, and some fun facts about potatoes. With that said, I'm going to throw it right over to John like a hot potato and have him start off here with our analysis on that.
Yeah, so the first question to ask is, why on earth do we as Idahoans talk about and value potatoes so much? Which is not something I'd ever thought I would ask myself until moving here, and now it's a thing that I ask myself. So the talked about part has to do with the sheer amount. Idaho produces about 30% of the nation's total crop of potatoes each year. And to give that number a little context, a single Idaho county, Bingham, produces almost as many potatoes as the entire state of Maine, which Maine's not that big, but that's a lot of potatoes. On the value side, though, Idaho's potato crop was worth $1.41 billion in 2022. Not to mention that we as a state developed the most famous potato variety, the russet Burbank, which was developed in the state in 1872 by Luther Burbank. Its large size and excellent baking and processing qualities make it ideal for French fries and other products. And oh, goodness gracious, it tastes really good. Now, we know why Idaho potatoes are so valuable and that we produce a ton of them. We all want to know, where are these potatoes being grown? Well, as a matter of fact, Idaho has what is called the Potato Belt, kind of like the Bible Belt, but liquor stores might still be open on Sunday.
I mean, both of them are brown.
Right? Well, the best liquors are. I mean, vodka and gin are okay too, but...
Sorry, all the kids are going to have to move out of the room. Just be.
I mean, it all depends on how much tea you total. But anyway, back to potatoes. As a matter of fact, Idaho has, I already said that. We have the Potato Belt, kind of like the
Bible Belt.
Bible Belt. Yeah, I already made that joke. Haha. Jokes are best the second time around. Anyway, so this Bible Belt wraps around the southern part. It's actually the Potato Belt. Wraps around the southern part of the state, and it's primarily in eastern and south central Idaho. And for those wanting a more exact location, about 65% of the potatoes grown in the state are in eastern Idaho, and 28% are in south central Idaho. So if you really want to see a field of potatoes, your best bet would be to go to eastern Idaho. Plus, if you want to learn more in person about Idaho's potatoes, in Blackfoot, there's the Idaho Potato Museum. So you can Go there and learn all you want about potatoes, which actually, that sounds kind of fun.
Oh, yes. I mean, it seems like Eastern Idaho, love you if someone's listening from there. I mean, no disrespect, but you guys seem to have a knack for having the weirdest museums in the state. We've got the Potato Museum, which for Idaho is not weird. And then you have the Clean Museum, which has the largest collection in the world of vacuum cleaners over history. We talked about that. If John will link that above, it'll hopefully pop up. But literally, it is the largest collection of like vacuum cleaners. It is.
Dude, that's awesome. That sounds like it was a museum that was started by someone who just collected vacuum cleaners and was like, well, what do I do with all this crap? Or it was his son and he inherited this collection of vacuum cleaners and went, well, how do I make money on this? And now there's a museum and it probably doesn't make any money, but at least he's happy.
I actually saw some footage of it. I did the article and then a couple months later or whatever else, I was watching, I think Instagram shot me something. It actually is like, they've got a full like playhouse jungle gym, and then they'll go through like the different cleaning processes and have like an area to teach you how to remove any type of stain. And then you have the vacuum cleaner section, and then they have the clean garden with his like different herbs that are supposed to be for cleaning purposes. I haven't been yet.
The Museum of Clean, sharing the value of clean with the world.
So you can clean your potatoes. They should have a stall there. This is how you clean potatoes and wash them before you press.
Don't you just do that with water in your hands? I don't know.
Yeah. That would be the redneck being like, yes, just clean it. It's fine. If you get a little dirt there, you'll live.
I mean, dirt's good for you. It boosts your immune system.
Yeah, every 5-year-old or 2-year-old has taught us this lesson, okay? They're still standing.
Right. But anyway, so getting back to potatoes here. So potatoes were first planted in Idaho in the mid 1800s by missionaries and pioneers, which kind of makes me laugh that it's not a thing that's been here for a while. They're an import. So
yes.
Yeah. Henry Spalding, a Presbyterian missionary, was the first to grow potatoes in Idaho in 1837 to help feed the Nez Perce tribe. As irrigation expanded over the years, more farmers began planting potatoes, with the first commercial harvest valued at $250,000 in 1882. Which back then...
Well, Chris, you want to check that for
let me do that.
Value?
So what is that, 250?
Because yeah, I as you were reading that, I instantly thought, wait a second, what is that in current Benjamin?
$765,000.
Okay, so that's a bit of increase.
I mean, it's not a small number.
No, it is not. It is not. Which, on that, obviously, there has been some value for a long time here with Idaho potatoes. But something that I regularly like to mention and kind of joke about, here again, Idahoan, welcome to the potato jokes, is that here in Idaho, you can say, especially if you're a kid at the dinner table and mom's like, eat your vegetables. Yes, I'm eating my vegetables. I'm eating potatoes. Because according to the Idaho legislature, our state vegetable is the potato.
Well, we talked about this before, and it's not even just the Idaho legislature. The potato is a vegetable. It's a root, much like a carrot.
It's a tuber,
I think,
right?
Yeah, a tuber. It is a vegetable, like by definition.
So for all the mothers out there, I'm sorry if I have armed your kids with something.
Well, but that's how, honestly, and to bring this in kind of a negative direction, that's how schools get away with making lunches that have all of the food groups, and your vegetables are French fries.
You're like, look, that's a vegetable.
Yeah, French fries and ketchup.
There's your ketchup.
Oh,
look, see, I've hit all the groups.
All right, talking about ketchup real quick, I heard this. So ketchup is a sports drink. It's a liquid. It's mostly sugar, and it has fruit flavoring. Sports drink.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm not going to argue on it because I do not care that passionately about sports drinks.
Sports drink.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's great.
Also funny to think, if we're going back in time, that derailing, but I will bring it back around. Tomatoes were originally thought to be poisonous. Like, definitely poisonous, because the logic was if you see something red, it's bad, it's dangerous for you. And so, welcome to an American doing an American thing. We wouldn't have had all the delicious tomato things if it hadn't been an American. Because there was a gentleman that was eccentric. I can't remember some town. It was back east that sat there in front of an entire town and had an entire basket of tomatoes and ate them all. And then he didn't die. As the story goes.
That makes me think of people who first tried mushrooms. Like, ooh, these are interesting. And, Bill over there eats one and dies. And then Ted over there eats one and has this like religious experience. And then you're going, okay, I guess I'm going to eat the third mushroom and let's see what happens.
Right. I know the history part of it that's interesting is that potatoes originally, same there with tomatoes, which is kind of crazy for the Italians because I feel like they blow their top, were from South America. They were not something that was from here at all. The Aztecs were the one where the potatoes came from in South America, which then you're thinking of all the tropics and stuff. But if you actually go far enough north in South America, it starts becoming like the similar latitudes you have here in Idaho and certain areas of those high mountains.
Right. So tomatoes were native to South America. In fact, several species are still found growing wild in the Andes. Tomatoes were domesticated and cultivated in Mexico by 500 BC. It's thought that the first cultivated tomato was small and yellow. So that's kind of cool. And then potatoes, the potato is native to the Peruvian, Bolivian Andes. It was cultivated in South America by the Incas as early as 1800 years ago. So not as long ago as the tomato, but yeah. And then the Spaniards who colonized South America introduced potatoes into Europe during the second half of the 16th century. Little did they know, they would both save and doom Ireland. Or no, let's see, they would save Ireland and doom Russia because vodka.
Yes. Yeah, the Russians found that and were like, well, you see, comrade, I found a different way to use this.
Right? Well, I mean, it's clear. It's kind of like water.
That's fair. Yeah. But speaking of things that usually America has conflict with, that's a bad transition, but I'm going to work with it.
All right, go for it. What else do we have conflict with? Russia and potatoes?
Yes, actually those two things. That
All
Oregon,
right.
in its last legislative session, decided to make its state vegetable a potato, which we talked about that. And
jerks. I was going to use a different word and then realized I remembered we were family friendly and I didn't.
John!
I used a family friendly word. Unless that's also about, you know what?
No,
I got called out at some point for calling people jerks, and they're like, there are children present. I was like, whose children is that not okay with? And yeah, so sorry if you're one of those people that I just offended.
Watch, we just edit. We're thinking about for the locals, kind of a teaser there, having like a blooper reel or something. What we should do for this specific segment is cut it out and keep like bleep, 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 bleep. So it's like, what did he say?
Give a fuzz around my mouth. Yeah.
What is he talking about? No, he just said.
Oh my gosh. Have you seen when people will take clips, and we talked about people transforming clips, but when you take clips of something innocuous and bleep out random words, it can turn the most innocuous statement into the most foul sounding statement ever. And it's amazing because your brain fills in all the worst words you can possibly imagine.
It's that
into those bleeps.
Pavlovian situation where we've all been trained with the bleeping to put bad words there.
Yes, those videos are wonderful, and I love them.
No, it really is. It's fascinating sometimes what makes people laugh. But I will admit, we did do a segment on that about Oregon and its legislature.
We did.
I don't know how much of a fight that will be. I just take that personally as a sign that Oregon wants the greater Idaho movement to win. They're just wanting so badly to be a part of us. And they're like, look, we have your favorite vegetable. Accept us. All right, this is fine. But that'll be its own interesting thing. And then
we don't want Portland though. You can keep Portland. We'll take everything east, but you can keep Portland and the entire coast.
I want the Wallowas so bad. So bad. It's so pretty over there. Ugh.
Yeah, but they can keep everything. The coastline can be theirs. We can go visit and then ignore the crazies.
Right. And I guess one thing I realized as we're going through all this, I had it in my notes, maybe a little bit rush, but like we've talked about it, we make a ton of potatoes, we give that context, but here's like the exact number. On average per year, Idaho produces about 12 billion with a B, pounds of potatoes per year. That's a lot of potatoes. Which, surprisingly, as someone who's usually in the Treasure Valley, I actually will fully admit I have not actually seen these potato fields. I've known they've been over in eastern Idaho because as a young kid, I asked my grandparents, and they were just like, oh, yeah, they grow them over there. Now, I will admit, remembering the statistics, there is one that was funny. is that so you have, if I scroll back up on my notes here, you have 65% of the potatoes grown or over there in eastern Idaho, about 28% are in central Idaho, and about 7% are processed here in the Treasure Valley. So all the Simplot facilities in the area, the amount of tonnage that's then moved across for processing amounts to about 7% in the
Oh,
Treasure Valley.
interesting. Oh, the other note that was in here that I thought was interesting is that to be labeled as an Idaho potato, it has to be grown completely within the state's borders, because Idaho potato is a federally registered trademark.
Mm-hmm.
So Oregon cannot raise Idaho potatoes. So screw you, Oregon, trying to take our potatoes. Get your own.
Yes. Yes. No, if you go to a grocery store, you see the label and you just think, oh, cool, that's kind of cute and cheeky. Like, oh, Idaho potatoes. Yeah, we're the Idaho potatoes.
Nope,
No,
it's
it's a
legit.
legal thing. And
Yeah.
I can't remember it right now. And as we're talking about this, I swear just the Idahoan out in me is coming out with potato facts. But I could have sworn I remember, like in the early 2000s, some legal case that was legitimately around that, where they were investigating a shipment of potatoes that were trying to say that they were Idahoan potatoes, and they were questioning the authenticity because the difference in value.
Oh, we're smuggling potatoes now. Oh gosh.
I want to find it. Please, if someone finds it, put it in the comment section. I didn't have the
That's
time
ridiculous.
to look for it, but as we're recording this, I'm remembering there was like something like that happened, maybe like 2006, maybe 2008, somewhere in there.
That's ridiculous, and I love it. And I'm glad that I know that that's a thing that happened, because my life was incomplete without knowing that there were legal battles over
Potatoes
trafficked potatoes.
or traffic spuds, I guess, whatever way you want to put it. I don't know.
Sure.
That's a question for you. Is spuds, the term for potatoes, something that's used just here in Idaho, or do you hear that outside the state?
In other places I've lived, it's I don't know. Potatoes are jokingly referred to as a spud or spuds, but not seriously. Like, you wouldn't
Okay.
hear anybody have, "Oh yeah, we're having hamburgers and spuds tonight."
Like, wait a
No,
second.
no one says that. No, it's potatoes, hamburgers and potatoes, baked potatoes, mashed potatoes,
Right.
potatoes au gratin, or potato souffle, or what's the one with cheese? Kind of like au gratin. Scalloped potatoes, cheesy scalloped potatoes, which are the best potatoes.
I will counter. My counter is where you have the potatoes, you dice them up into, maybe chunks or whatever else. Then you season them really well with oils and stuff. You wrap that in aluminum foil. Then you put that out on the
Yep.
grill and you
Yep.
cook that and you bring that in. And so each one of those little bites
Yep.
of potato has this oil impregnated on the outside and it's crispy,
Yep.
but then the inside is soft and buttery.
Yeah, and it's best with like red potatoes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I used to do that, and we would do that with burgers. That was fantastic. The other one, and this is going to rile you up, but you go down to New Mexico, go to, at least it used to be there. I
Please
don't know, 10
be a
years ago,
breakfast.
12
Don't
years
be a
ago.
breakfast burrito.
Oh yeah, totally breakfast
No!
foods. Go to the restaurant Wex, and you get their papas, and you get their papas supreme, and it's a whole bed of like shredded hash browns, and then it's topped with your pork meats, so sausage, bacon, and ham.
Okay.
And then on top of that goes your egg, and the best way to do that is an over easy egg, because then you crack the yolk and you mix it all up, and then you put it on warm, fresh, freshly made tortillas with jam, and then you just eat this. Oh yeah, and it's also doused in green chili. And of course, if you're down in New Mexico, it's more like a sauce. The green chili is. It's
Than a
not just
spice.
like green chilies that you put onto a thing. It's its own thing. It's kind of like salsa, but like nice and thick. Oh, fantastic. So, okay, I might have just changed my mind. Papas.
He's recounting
The
the
best.
heaven.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I miss New Mexican food. There's probably something wrong with me, but man
You're missing the
alive.
cuisine.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. New Mexican food is wonderful.
Breakfast burritos are fine. They just have to only be for lunch or dinner.
I'm okay with that.
I'm perfectly fine with them. I love them, but just go back to previous episodes. John can maybe link it or something. I have an issue with this.
I love how offended you are at the idea of breakfast in a tortilla. You're like, no, breakfast shall not be in a tortilla.
Well, I was talking with someone. We were trying to expound on this more. I know that like my brain has a preconception of what foods are set for breakfast, and it's like that's what you have. Now the other meals are a little bit more flowy. That like you can have Chinese for dinner, or you can have this or that. But like it just doesn't seem right to have certain items for breakfast. Granted, then there's other people that have no issue. I found there's like these two groups, like extroverts and introverts. Now you have the
Yep. Oh, I am a part
group.
of the I don't care what it is, you can eat it for breakfast group. We've got pizza in the fridge because we made pizza. There's a good chance I'll be eating pizza for breakfast tomorrow, and I am oh so happy about that.
Okay, can we here's another pet peeve. I know I'm weird, and I'm curious if you'll agree with me or not, or at least have sympathy upon me.
Well, I have sympathy upon you for all kinds of things, but continue.
Compose thyself. I can't.
All right, what do you got?
I gotta collect myself. Cut. For me, I can't. I feel like I'm having a very sad, pitiful, and I should be judged breakfast if I don't have something, at least one item that's warm. Like if the entire breakfast is just like cold cereal and there's nothing warm, there's not any warm tea, warm coffee, warm something to go with the breakfast. It seems like it's like having a warm-up meal for dinner. Like, yeah, it's dinner, but it's kind of sad, and like you should have something warm. That for me is for breakfast. Like somebody like, oh, just have some cereal or something. I'm like, no, I need to have something warm. I need to have like maybe some warm toast with the cereal.
Sure.
Or maybe, I'll have yogurt a lot for breakfast, but then I'm going to need something warm, scrambled eggs or something to go with it.
I have sympathy, but I cannot empathize with you. I would say that cereal for breakfast is kind of boring. I grew up with it, and I grew up eating Raisin Bran, and
that's good.
Was it not Frosted Flakes, but the non-sugar version of Frosted Flakes, whatever those were?
Like Corn Flakes or something?
Yeah, Corn Flakes or Raisin Bran. Those were our breakfast cereals.
No Rice Krispie.
But then, yeah, no Rice Krispie treats. Snap, Crackle, Pop were not welcome in our household. Apparently.
Hey, at least you dodged all the Roundup with the Cheerios.
Roundup?
Yeah, so Cheerios got caught that they would use their to get the wheat dry and ready for processing. They would spray a bunch of different chemicals of Roundup because it would actually pull the moisture level out. And so I got to a point where I think because of Roundup has a certain thing that like you could like take a magnet or something to the box because of like certain compound or different things. There were certain cereal brands that were getting caught with that. Cheerio like completely turned around and said we're using organic wheat and all this and everything, but they had just been spraying the living daylights out of it to dry it before they processed it.
I love American corporate food so much. These stories are the ones that make my day. Be like, oh yeah, I grew up eating that crap. That explains a lot about me and my generation and why we're so broken. Gosh.
It'll be very interesting to see how the millennial generation progresses when they're trying to watch for it all the time.
We're already crazy about the food that we eat. And yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. But yeah, potatoes, they're good for you. Eat them, especially the Idaho ones. And if you want to grow them, apparently potatoes grow really well, like wherever you are in Idaho. So, toss them in your own garden and have fun.
Yeah. Generally, the best practice that I've had, and here again, going back to our gardening thing, is dig a trench, put it about 6 inches deep, maybe a foot, put them in there. And the reason you want to do that is then you put it over and you only put half the soil. You only put half. Because then what will happen is the potato will sprout and it'll come up part of the way, and then you cover it again. And then you cover it again, and so what you do is called hilling. And then what you'll do is you'll double the production that potato will actually give you, because below the line, as it's growing up, that'll create more potatoes in that depth.
That's good to know.
You could also do it vertically, like if you get some chain link or whatever, and you just keep building this barrel up. I can't remember. I know there's a max bit you can go to try to mound them. And then when you're ready at the end of the year, you just take the barrel apart, and there's all your potatoes.
Dude, that's awesome.
No dig.
Very cool.
Very American. But, anywho, We'll bring it to a close here. Now you know about stuff with potatoes, and you also know how to get your driver's license, hopefully, or you can either yell at your representatives for needing to change certain things related to that.
Right? And knowing is indeed half the battle.
And now I know where that's from.
G.I. Joe.
Thank you for listening to the entire show. I sincerely hope that you found it enjoyable and valuable. If we missed any important points or provided incorrect information, please feel free to reach out to us via email at lyimedia@protonmail.com or on Twitter by tweeting us at @localyocalidaho. With the small team we have, we're not able to cover everything, but we do our best to cover the most interesting and important stories. Thank you for your continued support and assistance. That's all for now, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Godspeed.